Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are looking at the Peru collection by OPI for fall 2018. I cannot believe we're already looking at fall collections, but I am so excited because fall is my very favorite season for nail polish. So I got this collection from polishpick.com. They are amazing to get OPIs at. They're $5.75 a bottle. You really can't beat that price. And if you use my name, I don't get paid for it or anything, but they will send me the collections if my name is used enough. So highly recommend using my name so I can get all of the OPI collections as they come out to share with you, because sometimes I skip the collections based off of if I'm just not interested in the shades or price. So sometimes I skip them, but if you use my name, I can review all of the OPI collections for you. So in the description box below, I will link the OPI site, I will link their Instagram page, I will link the Polish Pick site, and then I will link my Instagram page where you can see more swatches of all 12 of these polishes, and let's go ahead and get started. So first we have Como Se Llama, and this is a deep brick red cream with like a touch of a terracotta-y shade to it. So here's our first coat of Como Se Llama. This goes on really nicely, really smooth, very easy to work with formula. I did have oil on my hands though, so I did have some that wanted to pull over there on the side, but like in general, it doesn't run or pull or anything like that. OPI is on the thinner side as far as formulas go though, so you do have to work in pretty thin coats to avoid that. But it is completely opaque here in 2 coats. It does dry glossy on its own. I didn't have any kind of staining, and everything in this collection is creams, so that is kind of across the board that there's no difficult removal or texture to these at all. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have I Love You Just Be-Cusco, and this is a little bit more of a brighter red cream than the last polish, but it does still have that kind of deeper oxbloody almost brick quality to it. And just for reference, here it is next to Como Se Llama. Here's our first coat of I Love You Just Be-Cusco. This also goes on really nicely and smooth. Again, a pretty good formula. OPI, once again, is on the thinner side of formulas, so you do have to work in thinner coats to avoid any kind of cuticle flooding or anything like that. I am used to applying mostly indie polishes, so the mainstreams always take me a second to get used to. This is completely opaque here in 2 coats. Again, I didn't have any kind of staining. You do want to avoid with these 2 reds though, getting them in your cuticles because they are a little bit difficult to get out. Again, this one's going to dry glossy on its own. You will want a nice glossy top coat to finish this off and help keep your manicure lasting a little bit longer, and this one wasn't hard to remove, so there is 2 coats. So up next we have My Solar Clock is Ticking, and I have a really hard time describing this color because in different lightings it looks completely different to me. So this is a pinky, terracotta, orangey, pink, dusty, rosy, pink terracotta cream. Here's our first coat of My Solar Clock is Ticking. This one also goes on really opaque here on this first coat. I did have a couple of light spots, so I am going to go in for a second coat, but this is a potential for just needing 1 coat depending on your application. Again, a nice, smooth, buttery formula that's easy to work with. So here's our second coat, and this one is completely opaque in 2 coats, so it was very close in 1. This one also dries significantly darker than when it goes on, so just bear that in mind. You will want a nice glossy top coat just to keep this one lasting, but it does dry really glossy on its own. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Alpaca My Bags, and this is a beautiful dusty light blue cream. Here's our first coat of Alpaca My Bags. This one goes on nicely, again, a good formula. This is pretty sheer here on this first coat though, so it is going to have to be built up. But again, a good formula, a little bit on the thinner side as far as the entire spectrum goes, but it's not hard to work with. So this was surprisingly opaque in 2 coats for me, but I could see if you work in extremely thin coats needing a 3rd coat of this. Again, no staining, it's not hard to remove, and it dries pretty glossy on its own, but you will want a top coat if you want it to last. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Don't Toot My Flute, and this is a dusty lavender cream. Here's our first coat of Don't Toot My Flute. This one also has, again, a really good formula. Across the board, these are pretty easy to work with, but this one is a little bit sheer here on this first coat as well, so you will want to go in for 2. But I didn't have any running or pulling or anything like that, as long as you work in thinner coats. So here's our second coat, and this one does cover completely in 2 coats for me as well. This one, again, will dry really glossy on its own, though you will want a top coat if you want it to last. And again, I haven't had any staining with anything in this collection, but I'm not prone to staining, so just bear that in mind. You will want a base coat either way. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Grandma Kista Guaco, and this is a brighter purple cream. First coat of Grandma Kista Guaco. This one also has a good formula. It is on the thinner side, like in full spectrum as far as anything in this collection goes. Also, I feel like this one is on the thinnest side of that. This one's also like a jelly polish, so it is going to have to be built up. I do need 3 coats to get this one completely opaque, but again, it builds up really nicely on its own, and this is a really beautiful candidate for layering glitter in between the layers to make a beautiful jelly sandwich. This is completely opaque in 3 coats for me here. I also didn't have any staining. This one does dry very, very glossy on its own per the nature of jellies, but if you do want it to last, you will want a nice glossy top coat. So there is 3 coats. Up next we have Yes, My Condor Can-do, and this is a plummy mauve cream. Here's our first coat of Yes, My Condor Can-do. This one is pretty opaque here on this first coat. It is a little bit patchy, so you will want to go in for a second coat. But again, a good, easy to work with formula. A little bit on the thinner side as far as the full spectrum goes, but very easy to work with. This is another one though that for me personally, I don't want to get in my cuticles because they are pretty difficult to get out, these deep reddy plum shades. This is completely opaque here in 2 coats, though it's going to dry glossy on its own, but again, if you want it to last, you'll want a nice glossy top coat. So there's 2 coats. Next up we have Machu Picchu, and this is a putty nude cream shade. So here's our first coat of Machu Picchu. For being such a light shade, this covers really well here on this first coat. It does need a second coat, but I feel like after a few uses, this is one that I'd probably be able to get away with 1 coat for. And again, easy to use, easy to work with, no formula complaints across the board. So here's our second coat, and this one does cover completely in 2 coats for me. And I forgot to mention, all of these also self-level really, really well. There's a lot of them that I looked at after the second coat or during the second coat that I thought it would need a 3rd coat because of spots, but if you let it dry for just a second, they do self-level really, really nicely. So there is 2 coats. Next up we have Somewhere Over the Rainbow Mountain, and this is a lighter nutty nude shade, and then here it is next to Machu Picchu, so you can see that this one has a little bit more pink in it than Machu Picchu. Here's our first coat of Somewhere Over the Rainbow Mountain, and this one also covers really well here on this first coat, just a couple patchy spots, so I am going to go in for a second coat. But another beautiful formula here, just work in decently thin coats. You don't have to go like extremely thin to avoid the running and pooling, but thinner. This is completely opaque in 2 coats. This is also like my perfect mannequin hand shade. This is so beautiful, and I feel like it's a universally flattering shade. Again, it'll dry glossy on its own, but if you want it to last, you will want to put on a top coat to keep it on. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have 7 Wonders of OPI, and this is a light mauve pink. Here's our first coat of 7 Wonders of OPI. broken record, this cover is pretty good here on this first coat. It also has a really good formula. It's a little bit patchy here on this first coat, so I am going to build it up with a second coat. Again, easy to use, easy to work with, no running, pulling, staining, anything like that, just across the board. Here's our second coat, and this one does cover completely in 2 coats as well. It dries glossy, dries fast. You will want a top coat to keep it on. No staining, just the same as I've said for just about all of these polishes. So there's 2 coats. Up next we have Lima Tell You about this color, and this is a brighter, a little bit of a dusty quality to it, but bright at the same time, pink cream. Here's our first coat of Lima Tell You about this color. This one also goes on really nice and evenly. Pretty opaque here on this first coat, just a little bit patchy, so I am going to go in for a second coat. OPI does pinks and reds both really, really well, so it's not a total surprise that these are really, really good. So here's our second coat, and this does cover completely in 2 coats. Again, it dries glossy on its own. No formula issues or anything like that here either. But I'm sure you have something from OPI like this in your collection. So there is 2 coats. And lastly for today, we have Suzi Will Quechua Later, and this is a little bit brighter, of a little bit of a dusty medium tone pink, and then here it is next to Lima Tell You about OPI. And here's our first coat of Suzi Will Quechua Later, which I'm not entirely sure I'm saying right. This does have a really good formula as well. No running, pulling, staining, anything like that. Pretty opaque here on this first coat, just a little patchy, so I am going to go in for a second coat. So here's our second coat, and this one does cover completely in 2 coats for me. And this isn't a pink that I see a ton of from OPI like the last one, but it does again have just a really good OPI formula. So there's 2 coats. So let's talk about some standouts. The first one being Como Se Llama. I love these brick red shades. This is so beautiful. It has an amazing formula. Like, everything about this screams fall to me, and I'm thoroughly in love here. My next favorite is Alpaca My Bags, not only because the name is just the cutest thing in the world, but this is a super flattering shade on me. It's got a perfect formula. It's one of those universally flattering shades, so I really, really like this one. But I think my favorite goes to My Solar Clock Is Ticking. This is a super original shade. It's somewhere in between a pinky red terracotta, and it's absolutely beautiful, again with a fantastic 2-coat formula. So these are my standouts, but I do think My Solar Clock Is Ticking is my favorite of the entire collection. And that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of this collection. Let me know if you plan on picking any of them up, and let me know what your favorite was. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you'd like to see more from me, and I will talk to you again next time.